What's up, guys? Welcome back. Episode 6.
Hi, guys.
How's it going?
Hope y'all are doing well. I know the weather's been kind of yucky if you're here in San Antonio. The weather's been pretty gross, so I apologize for that. Not like it's our fault or anything, but it still sucks. Today, we're going to be talking about bulking and cutting. We did kind of bring that up at the end of the last video, so we are really excited about today's topic.
I'm very excited about the cutting video because I'm going to ask so many questions to Tony.
I was going to say the same
I'm
thing.
fielding a lot of questions.
I was probably going to ask a lot of questions,
I'm
too.
very excited
I'm okay
because
with
it's so popular with MMA, boxing, any weight competitions, jiu-jitsu. I mean, it gives you a performance advantage in a sense, but if everybody's doing it, then I don't know. But still, it's something that's been happening forever. Mm-hmm. And when you Google it, you get a lot of just kind of blah.
Yeah.
Right? I know when I was doing the PN Level 1, there's a page that Berardi talks on the water balancing and stuff. So I know some of the safety features and like specifics. I know there's some alterations, but I like the specifics. And I know you've helped people with bodybuilding and stuff. So if you could just kind of run down, first of all, what it is, just teach us, right?
Okay.
And then eventually I'm probably going to ask you if somebody was wanting to do a show, what are the last 2 weeks looking like?
I think that'll be a lot of
Yeah.
I'm excited for that. That's
So
cool.
we want to start there? We want to start with bulking?
Let's start with bulking.
Okay,
Start at the
we'll
top.
start with bulking, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's
because
start
I
with
feel like
bulking.
that one will go pretty quick.
Yeah, we'll go pretty
Well,
quick.
bulking, there's a huge misconception behind bulking because a lot of people think I'm trying to gain weight, so I have to just consume copious amounts of garbage. And thankfully, that's kind of shifted. So a lot of people are making a shift from what it was, just tons of calories, to what it should be, like getting higher quality foods, things like that. Big things with bulking that can be detrimental to your bulk, high inflammatory foods, gaining a ton of body fat, because body fat itself is inflammatory. So it'll inhibit your ability to actually gain muscle or strength or increase performance.
And attract more inflammation.
Exactly. So fat itself is, well, do you guys want to, I'll let you guys go through that, because if I'm going to be doing most of the teaching, explain fat and how it's inflammatory.
How fat's bad for you?
Yeah, well, aside from like that, well, yeah, I guess that's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you think about fat, like fat accumulates fat based on the fact that you have fat. And I know it sounds convoluted, it sounds like a cycle, but you get inflamed, your body builds more fat as a protective barrier, and next thing you know, you're stuck. Yeah, exactly.
Our senescent, our dead cells tend to group up together, and they group up near the fat, or in the fat cells, right? With the fat cells. So that's why gray hair usually comes in blobs as opposed to just one hair here, one hair here. It's like a spot and a spot and a spot. So,
and that's huge to realize, because if you've gone too far, you're producing too much insulin, you're stuck in this system where you're damaging your metabolism in order to gain muscle, so you're doing more harm than good. And that's the biggest thing that people do wrong with bulking, because they're throwing on a ton of extra calories and not a ton of extra quality. And then, of course, you're going to have a decline in testosterone, estrogen at balance will go off, thyroid function can potentially get detrimental. And then, of course, you just lose all of that metabolic drive, so then when it goes to the cut, it's harder to cut. And
that's why the cut phase never comes.
Exactly.
You stay in the bulk phase for the rest of your life.
Yeah, because bulking's easy.
It's easy.
It is easy.
That's
and
kind of go back
excuse.
to last week's episode. If it fits your macros is hugely related with bulking.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Usually people are bulking and they're typically on that same exact plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you're saying the chemicals come in, it's more oxidative damage, so there's more harm than good.
Yep.
Absolutely. And that's the biggest thing is like I hate the term bulking. Like it's the point of it is fantastic in terms of, competition or just, physically becoming larger. Absolutely, you are going to bulk, but that's the biggest thing is so many use it as an excuse to just eat whatever they want.
Yep.
Like I had a friend that I just would get so upset with, and that he was like, "Oh, I'm eating for strength," and I'm like, "You're huge."
Yeah.
Like in terms of like fat mass, like you're not gaining any more muscle mass. Well, I'm getting stronger. Well, yeah, because your body's going to adapt, but the fact that when you go to cut to do whatever competition it is that you want to do, it's like you're never going to get there.
Yeah.
You have now made it more of a burden on your body that, you're not sleeping well anymore because you're carrying so much extra weight that your body, you're almost suffocating yourself when you're sleeping. And it's just to the point where it's like, yes, bulking you can absolutely do safely and properly, eating quality food. But the thing is in order to gain muscle mass, you don't need that crazy amount of amount of calories. Same thing for energy deficit. You're not don't do what I did and go down to 900 calories. Same thing is that if your resting metabolic rate is 2,000, you should not be eating 4,000 calories to bulk. Yeah. No, you don't really and truly, maybe 500 calories.
And you can
extra.
I think it's probably more, those calories should be based on where the strength training session is, right? So having the proper pre-workout nutrition and post-workout, of course, avoiding all the chemical foods. But when you get into for me, when I hear the word bulk, I'm like, because in a sense, I'm in that bulk phase now. I want to put on 6 to 8 pounds of muscle. But I'm not considering it bulking. I'm just considering it gaining lean muscle. So my approach, and this is what I plan on doing, and if recommendations, please recommend them, right?
For sure.
But so before my strength training sessions, I'm definitely going to try not to do them fasted. Mm-hmm. I want to try to either have solid food 3 to 4 hours before. I'm probably going to have about a palm and a half, maybe 2 palms of protein, a fist of vegetables, and maybe 3 to 4 cupped handfuls of starchy carbs, including and or fruit. So I usually mix, just depending on what I have in the fridge. And then a little bit of fat, not too much. I would say maybe 1-2 thumbs, and that's maybe avocado or peanut butter, just whatever. But I'll do that to basically limit muscle damage in the workout. And then if I can't get a food in or a solid meal, then what I'm going to do is do a shake an hour to an hour and a half before, right? A super shake that we've always talked about. Then proceed with my workout. And then after, going to basically have what I had 3 to 4 hours before after as well, right? Maybe with a little bit more emphasis on maybe more towards the 4 cupped handfuls of carbs, with fruit and starchy carbs being basically half and half, right? That's essentially what I'm going to do, and probably aim to work out 3 to 4 days a week, and that's it. I don't know if anything, my bulking foods, my mentality behind that is when I incorporate the sugar, right, the fruit, the spike in my blood sugar is going to help my muscles grow. Yeah. Right, and that's essentially my bulk, right? That's where I plan on getting 5 to 8 pounds of muscle over the next 2 to 3 months. So.
Yeah. And when you think about, so if you look at the spectrum of humanity, and especially if we could make it shorter in strongman competitions, powerlifting competitions, bodybuilding competitions, when they've been bulking in the past, they've been doing everything they could to throw extra calories in. But if you go beyond that, you go back to the Crusades. It's a great time to use. They're carrying equipment. They're carrying armor all day. They're carrying a weapon. They're not eating 4,000 calories a day. They're not eating 5,000 calories a day.
That's true.
They're timing their meal intrinsically, of course. They may have known, like, if I eat this, I'll have more energy for battle. But it's happening. And when you look at the sculptures, the Roman sculptures, the Greek sculptures, these men and women were just shredded, and they were huge. So that's not us reflecting back on them. We're trying to become like them when we cut and we lean out.
That's true.
And they would have been manipulating macronutrients, and again, maybe consciously, but I doubt they didn't have a way to measure it. They did it all based on feel. Yeah. So you're hitting every point. Like, I'm eating before I move. I'm eating with more sugar after I move to replenish energy.
Yes.
And it sounds logical. It sounds like what it should be. And that's how they would have done it. And then fast forward to now, you can actually see a change in how powerlifters and strongmen actually look, because they're getting rid of the fat, because the fat is not functional. So when you think about weight classes, when you think about a sport that requires you to make weight, if you have too much extra fat, when you cut, you deplete too much energy out. But if you have the right amount of fat, and everyone's going to have a different amount, if you're looking at, athletes are going to usually be somewhere between 5 to 12% fat. When they have to cut, it's a lot smoother window to cut. And they're using more science now. So you're not cutting down 4 or 5 weight classes. You're not cutting down that much because there's a huge drop in performance. So if you're doing an appropriate bulk, you're increasing density of muscle fibers, you're increasing density of your actual your strength. You're changing your training to match what your goal is. So the big thing with the bulking is, you've overconsumed calories, but when you look at the timing of it, so like Isaac was saying, we're going to have some sugar afterwards, we want that insulin spike, because what will happen is when you have that come in there, even if you're in a caloric deficit, insulin itself is anabolic. Your body's goal is to survive. So again, if you look back, different civilizations, yes, they would have had less muscle mass. They may have been weighing in at 170 or 180, but shredded, and that's where you get those sculptures from. That's where you get that look from. The same thing does still apply today to the human body. Your body still responds the same way. So if you're taking in the sugar post-workout, you're going to have that anabolic drive right there, which is going to help you add muscle. And you're not doing it throughout the day. You're not getting multiple insulin spikes, because then you're just adding fat. You may need more depending on how hard you're training. Yeah. If you're super sore, things like that, you may need a second spike just to make sure we can drive that response. And then having a lower carb meal before your workout will help with maintaining appropriate amounts of body fat. So kind of like you're saying, I'm going to have a little bit less carbs, have most of my carbs after. Okay. You said 2 handfuls before?
I said 3 to 4, but probably 3.
Yeah.
So probably 2 to 3 then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be even better.
The big thing there is when you think about how you train, this is what a lot of people kind of throw off. When you're bulking, you're going to end up consuming a huge meal before your workout, and then you have detriment to your workout. You either need to work out longer because you have to start off slower because you have that food mass in your stomach, or you end up digesting food, maybe you're slightly lethargic, so you're not putting as much into your workout. So what you're saying is 3 hours before, you'll have time to process all that. Yeah, you'll feel great. All those nutrients in your system. Because the whole point of a workout, especially if you're looking for performance or body change, is to get the most out of that time possible, and then the adaptations do the rest of the work.
Yeah, and so you don't want your body to focus on digesting food and working out, because there's rest and digest and there's fight or flight, 2 different systems, and you're trying to turn both of them on. It's just not going to work. So by giving your body enough time to digest the food, now those nutrients are usable for the workout. You have a better workout, less muscle damage, and the post-workout comes in with the insulin spike to drive anabolic growth, right? That's where the muscle comes in. All of a sudden, I don't have to work out an hour 7 days a week. I can do 20, 30-minute workouts 4 days a week.
Yeah, kind of touching on, this is honestly a little bit slightly off topic, but talking about bringing sugars back in, some of the research and stuff that I've been doing, and an article that I had read is that fructose may be more beneficial for muscle growth post-workout than glucose. Only reason being is like the actual transporter molecules for fructose and glucose, there's more of them in the muscle cells for fructose than there is for glucose. And so for muscle growth, like fructose may be the better option. So like whole foods in terms of vegetables and fruits may be a better option as a post-workout than like rice and stuff like that.
Or pixie sticks. I remember, multiple times, and hopefully the people who did this to me are watching. But they'd be like, hey, you want some pixie sticks? It'll help. And I'm like, dude, just have an apple, bro. Yeah. Or an apple and a banana if you want to have that much sugar, and you're getting vitamins and minerals to help with everything. Yep. Right? And yeah, you're absolutely right. Fructose would work much better than glucose or high fructose corn syrup 45 or high fructose corn syrup 90 or so on and so forth, right?
Well, it's like the new thing now. It's like you're eating gummy bears or Sour Patch Kids or stuff like that during your workout, which it's not as beneficial as people think, because you're burning some fat while you're working out, depending on the intensity. Unless you're doing like a super high intensity workout or you need a massive change in energy production, you don't need that kind of stuff coming in. And a lot of the studies that they do with those sugars are actually based off endurance athletes. So you're here, you're trying to get in shape for exactly.
Very, very different.
if you're a bodybuilder, yeah, exactly. If you're a bodybuilder eating gummy bears during a workout, you're actually inhibiting fat metabolism. Yeah, you're getting a little bit more insulin in there. Yeah, you may get a little bit more work done, but now your insulin levels and blood sugar levels are going to be all screwy because your body's actually absorbing sugar while you're working out. So you're more likely to have a blood sugar crash and need the gummy bear to survive the workout, not refuel the actual sugar in the glycogen stores.
Hence the opposite effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now your rest period is actually where you're replenishing your energy. And if you can't replenish energy fast enough, that's a conditioning thing, which we get into more with the cutting.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, like you look at, CrossFit athletes, and you look at the way they actually metabolize everything and the way that they perform, and I'm not saying that's the gold standard of how you should be training, but they're doing bouts of super high intensity workouts, then they recover because their conditioning is there. When you look at strongmen, and this is a correlation I made very early on in CrossFit, the way that strongmen train and the way that CrossFit competitors train is very, very similar. The difference is the weight that they move. So when you think about Atlas stones, they do sandbag carries. Mm-hmm. So, actually, the Atlas stone you're just picking. They used to do the odd objects in strongman. They still do. You had to pick up a stone that's the shape of Texas that weighs 120 pounds and run it 50 yards, and then come back and pick up an anvil. So now you're doing sandbags that are different weights.
Yeah.
Exact same thing, different weight modalities. But one of the things they're both doing is they're getting their competitors leaner, because fat mass is just fat mass. It has nothing there. If you have 10 pounds of fat on your body, you have somewhere between 35,000 and 40,000 calories of energy.
Yeah.
So if you do, you got it. So if you think about that, if you're running a marathon, it's about 2,000, maybe 3,000 calories of energy. So you have enough energy to get through 30 marathons, 40 marathons. So when you think about it, what more bulk would you actually need? You actually have all that energy on your system. Hell, if you only had 3 pounds of fat on your system, you would still have enough energy to make it through 2 different marathons, which is where the ultra runners are coming in, because they can tap into those fat stores.
I think that's interesting because I don't remember what documentary I was watching. It was on some indigenous peoples who their bodies are so well conditioned for long distance. Mm-hmm. And we're not talking about running. We're talking about just going long distance, and not like all out, anything like that. Our bodies are literally designed to break down that energy that we can outlast a deer, because the deer is going to eventually get tired and is not going to continue to run. We can keep going.
Awesome,
and then get that to break that down, and there you go, there's our meal. But we've spent all that energy to going and tiring that animal out. That is what our bodies are designed to do. And so when it comes down to long distance endurance type stuff, that is ideal for how our body functions, because that's exactly how indigenous peoples and before, that's how they survived. And so it's like when it comes down to fat burning and carbohydrate burning and things like that, our body is the most efficient machine. Absolutely. Like, it's fantastic.
Yeah. What's another common thing we see? What about the sugar spike right before workouts?
So a lot
like
of times,
instead of the gummy bear during, it's the gummy bears before.
It's
to drive testosterone growth and growth hormone and all that.
And that's the thing. So the higher your insulin goes, the lower your testosterone goes.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of bodybuilders,
which means the higher your estrogen goes.
Bingo. So you're taking in androgynous insulin in order to drive muscle growth, which is a very dangerous thing if you're looking from a bodybuilding standpoint. But the other thing is you have to take in extra testosterone with it, because the two don't coexist. Normally when you see somebody with an insulin imbalance, you also see a decline in resting testosterone. So you can spot it. There's a couple different ways that you can look for it, but the biggest thing is when your body is running off of sugar all the time, you're actually in a state of stress. So if you're in a state of stress, your body can either take care of rest and digest or fight or flight, and it's only going to take care of fight or flight. So the insulin spike before a workout is actually not what you want, because, again, you're burning sugar while you work out. So if you're putting sugar away and burning sugar at the same time, you're depleting it, literally burning a candle on both ends.
That's true.
And then once that end happens, you're tired, but are you tired because you gave everything in the workout, or are you tired because you just ran out of energy?
Bad nutrition.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where things like the UCAN and things like that
exactly
give you
what I was
more
gonna bring up.
performance energy. And I think I watched what you watched. They run the deer to death.
Yes.
I wish you could remember what it was.
I can't remember, but I thought it was so fascinating. I was like, that is so cool. Mm-hmm. It's just literally they track it and continue and chase it down. It's like but the thing is that by the time they go to kill the deer, because the deer is exhausted, it cannot continue. Yeah. And I'm just like, that is amazing.
Yeah.
That literally the metabolic processes in our body can sustain, and we're talking about days
Yeah.
of like tracking these deer, and
So
it's crazy.
the humans track the
Humans,
Yeah.
So
and the deer eventually just ran out of energy.
It runs out of energy. It
The
can't
humans,
continue
but
to
the humans
go.
weren't eating either.
No, I mean, of course they bring stuff with
Yeah.
them, and
But they're just chasing
But the
it
deer
down.
was eating too, though.
Well, it depends.
Probably.
It's in a
if
state
it
of-
can, yeah.
Dude, that's crazy.
So shout out to Wild Kratts on this one. Ava watched the show called Wild Kratts.
I love the Kratz brothers.
Yeah.
I grew up with the Kratz brothers.
And
They're awesome.
But she was watching this thing, and when you think about it, so I always use the example of like a tiger walks in the room or a bear walks in the room. So they were talking about cheetahs. A cheetah can only go for 20 minutes,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
true.
it's done.
So it,
like
it has to pick its target.
exactly. So a human chasing down a deer, we can actually, obviously a cheetah would come after us, but if you had a whole herd of people chasing after a cheetah, we're eating cheetah.
Yeah, you're right.
Like, it's going to outrun us, yeah, but it's only got 20 minutes.
That's
if
it.
you have 2 hours worth of energy that you can use, you're chasing that thing down. And it's not going to stop because it doesn't want to get eaten.
Yeah.
And so it'll get more distance on us, but then it's shot. It's
Eventually,
completely
it
wasted.
just has to rest, and that's where.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. Crazy, crazy.
There's a reason why we're the top of the food chain, and there's a
Yeah.
bunch of different arguments you can make about that with between tools and everything else. But yeah, I mean, in packs we can take down a bear. In a run we can hunt down a deer. From a strength standpoint, you can wrestle most other animals that don't eat meat to the ground, and then somebody else could take care of it. So to speak.
It's kind of where evolution went its separate routes. Apes and chimpanzees and orang, they have way more muscle. They're so much stronger than us, but their brains aren't the same, right? We have a cerebellum. We can think and strategize. We eat for that reason. That cerebellum, the brain, the nervous system dictates our breathing, our metabolic systems, right? So whereas chimpanzees and gorillas are eating for basically brute strength and power, not so much to think other than their normal thinking abilities to go from place to place, to survive. We are efficient in the sense of we can strategize, think, grow things. I mean, look what we can do, whereas they were never. And that's where our food fuels our brain and our metabolic systems, as opposed to our physical systems. And although we can influence the metabolic systems and everything for not clothes, sorry, for our muscles, my bad. Yeah. No, for the muscles, fat loss, or anything weight related. I think we should wrap the bulking up, right?
Yeah, because I think the
biggest
thing is-
takeaways.
Yeah, we've been bulking, adding muscle, adding strength for centuries without adding a ton of extra fat. You would have added some fat to survive the winter, but you wouldn't see people walking around with 30-40% fat.
Oh,
It
no.
wouldn't be
Dad
practical.
bod?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see it. You couldn't sustain it. Even if you had that, so think about a 40-pound sack. If I were to give you, I don't care what kind of condition you're in, a 40-pound backpack and tell you to go run 10 miles, you're going to be exhausted. And that fuel is just, it's there to be used, but it's not, you don't need that much at any given point in time. So meal timing is more important than actual bulking. The extra calories when you go to, we make the switch to going to cut, the extra calories when people go from cutting to bulking, they feel better, they feel like they have more energy because they have extra calories coming in than what they had before.
Yeah.
So the concept is if I keep bulking, and that's where, like, again, going back to bodybuilding, it's the lean bulk is now the thing, because you're adding more calories, but you're adding more quality. You're timing out your macros more appropriately. You're not just shoveling in Pop-Tarts and gummy bears and Twinkies just to get those calories in. But then again, if you're also looking at metabolic testing and metabolic conditioning, you're also keeping your conditioning up, so when it comes time to cut, you're cutting 4, 5, 6% body fat, not 20 or 15% body fat.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
That's where all your metabolic damage comes in.
Yep.
Because now you have that yo-yo effect, and we talk about like the bodies and the yo-yo effect and how bad that is for your heart and things like that. And that's a completely different thing that we could get into. But there's no reason for you to go from like 5% body fat to 25% body fat to 5% body fat. Because it gets harder each time.
Yep. Each time it gets worse.
I remember the first show I did, I got up to 220 pounds. And I was literally just shoveling food in. Because again, old school bodybuilding mentality, you just keep eating. And I remember I had a cut, and I ended up cutting from 220 to 176 for my first show. But when you did the body fat, I know. My lean mass, so this whole bulk, my lean mass only went up 10 pounds. But I ended at 185 as far as lean mass goes, but after dehydration and everything else, I had lost 10 pounds of the muscle that I put on. So I did nothing. All I could have done is just cut the entire time.
You could have just,
And been stage ready.
Wow, yeah, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Nuts.
All right. Well, there's bulking.
Yeah.
All right, this is still episode 6.
Still episode 6.
Still episode 6, part 2.
Well, it's still going to run consecutively.
I know, but it's just...
Oh, so we're switching to cutting.
Switch to
Cutting.
Cutting.
Sweet. Let's see here. Where can we start with cutting? Let's say, can you start with the bro science with cutting?
So, yeah.
Because I don't even know that. I never took the time to even entertain the idea because I knew it was wrong, but...
So, bro science cutting is all about restricting calories. So you work out more. So the concept is there. It's what's in our tradition. You work out more, you eat less, you lose weight, you cut body fat. The problem is you've come from bulk, and now it's going to work initially in the beginning. When you start like a bodybuilding cut, let's say, you went from bulking yourself up to that 25% body fat or whatever you got up to. Then you start to cut back. Now you've caused some metabolic damage, and your body starts to reverse that. So the first 4 weeks of your cut, you're actually dropping a ton of weight. You're actually changing your composition relatively quickly. The problem becomes after that first 4 weeks, all those adaptations stop because you changed you went into caloric restriction. So you went from a massive surplus to a massive deficit, and now the weight's falling off you. All of this is logical so far.
Yeah.
What ends up happening is once you push past that first 4 weeks, depending on what your cutting cycle is, whether it's 12, 16, maybe 8 weeks, your body stops changing. But in order to make the change occur again, you start cutting your calories down and increasing your work output. This is where the concept, again. So you basically, phase 1 is add cardio in for 30 minutes to 45 minutes a day. And this is where it gets wonky because these numbers aren't founded by science, and we know this through the metabolic testing, through all the classes that we've taken, the cardiorespiratory classes, all that other good stuff.
And studies done with fasted cardio versus cardio on
There's
food.
almost no
difference.
No difference.
Yeah.
Complete sidebar. But you end up seeing that. God, I know. I'm fighting the urge.
Yeah.
But you see that, and then the concept becomes you wear fasted cardio as a badge of honor. So I get less sleep to do my fasted cardio, which makes me irritable, which drives up my cortisol levels, which increases my stress, which causes me to burn more sugar, less fat. So now I have to do more cardio. And the cardio changes in increments of 15. So you're looking at the first phase is usually somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes of cardio, depending on how much fat you've accumulated. And then from there, after about month 1, we go from 45 to an hour or an hour and a half, depending. And that's kind of where it goes. In some cases, you're doing 3 hours of cardio a day plus a workout. So the last show that I did, it was 45 minutes a day from start to finish. So my entire workout, 45 minutes, 4 days a week, and that was it.
I remember that.
And
I was here.
And it was
it was
stupid easy. I did so towards the end. I started to get ready to do the rock and roll half marathon. So I added one day where I would run all zone 1, actually all zone 2.
That worked out perfect.
Yeah,
you could use that to just.
Yeah, it was just cool. It was just like, all right, I'm getting it in there, and I got the extra cardio.
I remember being dumbfounded when you were saying, I'm only doing 45-minute workouts. You were doing a lot of sun. You were getting a lot of sunlight. I remember that. But I was like, what?
Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So when you think about it, from a hormonal standpoint, I was taking my vitamins, so everything I was losing through sweat, I was regaining.
Yes.
Getting vitamin D.
In your micronutrients.
I was out there 20 minutes every day, and somewhere between 20 to 40, depending on how much time I had. And I would hit the sauna, and at that point I was only doing like 15 minutes in the morning, maybe that.
Okay.
So I was getting everything that I needed in to keep my metabolic processes running, and I was eating enough based on my resting metabolism to maintain lean mass. So I was not eating enough to gain fat, but just enough to maintain. So the biggest thing that people lose is when you think about caloric restriction, if you eat to maintain your body weight and add exercise, you've now created a caloric deficit.
Yes.
So the big thing with the bro science is you just create this big deficit, so big that your body needs to keep burning. What ends up happening is you end up losing muscle mass, and you see that
because you're in fight or flight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where you lose a bunch of extra weight on that bulk, and that's you bulked up, you gained all that weight, and now you didn't put much on.
Now you're panicking.
Exactly. So now you have to do more cardio, and now you have more stress, and now you're getting more calorically restrictive. And that's why a lot of people, towards the end of a cut, whether it's bodybuilding or other things, they're so depleted, they're so drained, and it's not logical to do it that way. So the goal is to keep your body fat as low as possible through your off season, and then you can go up 3-5%, but then you're at whatever you add. If you gain 10 pounds and you stayed at 3 or 5%, you may have gained 3 pounds of fat, but you also gained 3 pounds of muscle. Mm-hmm. You may have gained 10 pounds of fat, but you also gained 10 pounds of muscle. So that's why it stays consistent, and it's not looking at this massive jump.
Got you.
Mm-hmm.
Got you.
That makes sense.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So
that's just basically it.
Yeah.
Got you.
It's just create as big of a caloric deficit as possible.
Yeah.
I actually had someone who was posting all their stuff on Instagram. They're like, my coach told me to cut my calories by another 500 today. And I was like, and it was in her Instagram story, and I was like, okay. And then the next one was 60 minutes fasted cardio. And the next one was, 60-minute workout. And the next one was, I know.
Stress response.
And it's, exactly. So she's sitting there and she's wasting muscle away. And I was like, so I got to ask, just out of curiosity, where do these numbers come from? I know. I was like, he basically took my body weight and put it into the Harris-Benedict equation, and that's where he found out my calories needed to be. I was like, okay, awesome. But did he take into account the calories that you burn during the 2 hours of cardio that you do and the 1 hour workout that you do?
Dude, they always forget that.
Yeah, it's like you forget the expenditure, and then you have the epoch. So after your workout, you have something that we can't really measure.
Yeah.
It can be anywhere from 100 to 400 calories, depending on how hard the workout was. So now you've created a deficit for 3 hours, and then you have that other 3 hours worth of deficit.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're in the hole 1,000 every day.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know what epoch is, so that essentially is, in a really kind of plain, simple terms, is the energy that you're burning post-workout. Because you aren't going to just be burning calories or fat or carbohydrates or whatever during your workout. When you finish your workout, your body is going to have to recover. And so during that recovery period, you're still burning. And same thing for cardio, you're still going to be burning post-workout. Lifting weights and everything like that, you're still going to be burning. So after that energy expenditure, there is absolutely no way we have no idea how to measure that.
Yes.
And so, yes, that is very true. Yet.
We are smart humans.
We'll get there.
Time travel is possible, guys. Time travel is possible. They said it's possible. Yeah, that's a side.
That is a story for another day.
It is. But it is.
But yeah, so we don't know how to measure that. And so when it comes down to how much are you actually burning during your exercise period, probably during that time you're burning the X amount, but you're still burning some after that too. So when it comes down to calculating your energy deficits, we don't have a way to know how much that amount might be. Exactly. Because it from my understanding is that it's different for weightlifting, same thing as cardio, that weightlifting
makes 100% sense.
Absolutely. And so then
and then the situation or the state that your body's in. Are you dehydrated before or after the workout? Were you fueled? Are you fasted?
Yeah.
Exactly.
All that probably has an effect, absolutely.
Muscle damage, oxidative damage, all those things that accumulate during a workout are going to impact that post-exercise energy expenditure.
Exactly. And so then for that, it's just that needs to be taken into account as well, that if you're trying to put yourself into an energy deficit, just cutting calories may not be a good idea, because if you're already exercising, if you're cutting out 500 calories food-wise and then you're exercising for 2 hours, then that's another, God, depends on what you're doing, anywhere between 500 to 1,000 calories.
Yeah.
And then what? Guess what? You're not eating enough to sustain body function.
You're eating your own muscle.
Exactly.
Like you were saying.
Your body has to break down, your body will resort to what it has. Now, if you have a bunch of excess muscle, your body's going to be like, oh, we don't need that. Mm-hmm. For regular body function, we don't need that extra muscle. Yeah. So it'll break it down and use that for energy. Same thing for fat stores and, your brain, too. Your body can break down your brain for a source of fuel if you're not careful. So, just to be aware.
And this is the biggest thing with, as bad as it is, I keep picking on bodybuilders, sorry guys. When you look at a lot of, especially high-end bodybuilders.
So many of them doing the wrong thing.
It is, and it's mind-blowing because the big part that is missed in any sport, and I'm not saying every sport does it, but there's a high percentage of people that are using performance-enhancing drugs. So when you look at somebody who's taking, extra testosterone or extra increased clenbuterol to increase fat utilization, they can do a lot more than the average person without losing muscle because they've literally got something going in there to sustain muscle. So what the routine is, what people kind of boast about and brag about, there's more that goes into it. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a shortcut, but it preserves muscle. So the average person going out and doing some of these things, you're going to lose muscle because you're not doing the other stuff.
Oh, and there's doing the natural competition, so exactly. They can.
Yeah, and if you're doing a natural competition, there's also there's loopholes in that too.
Okay.
Because most places are 7 years. How do they test? Do they test urine or do they test blood? Mm-hmm. What's the half-life of what you're taking? There's a lot of Olympic lifting competitors, Olympic weightlifting competitors, that are taking stuff that only lasts in your system for 8 hours.
Yeah.
So you can pop negative on a drug test in the morning.
Straight up.
Take your stuff. Tonight, you're negative again.
John Jones failed for something that, they say is out of your system within 12 hours or something. Maybe even less than that. I don't know if it could have been 2, but...
Yeah. It's out of your bloodstream in a stupid little amount of time, but it stays in your kidneys. That's how he got caught.
That's how he got caught.
Got caught from a urine test. And you basically, in regular testosterone testing, it's very rare to get caught with testosterone in your system from a urine test. That's why they take the blood. So when you look at the testing spectrum, it's a lot harder to get caught with some of those things because how they're doing it. Most shows are only going to test urine. So I can sit here and I can load up on a whole bunch of stuff, and as long as I know how to beat a urine test, which, anybody can beat a urine test. It doesn't take a rocket scientist. You can Google it. You can increase your water consumption, increase cranberry juice consumption,
niacin and all that stuff. Yeah.
Controlling urine flow during the test will actually give you an easy way to pass it too.
Kegels.
Yeah,
that's what that is.
It is.
Yeah.
I had a buddy who used to pass a test every time. He would literally start to go and then go, oh wait, I gotta use the cup. I just gotta get that little burst out first, and then he would stop when the cup got halfway full and go in the toilet because all of the sediment is at the bottom and at the top. So in the middle, you've just got clean urine.
So you let it out?
Yeah.
Wow, that's nuts.
So you're letting the dense molecules out first because I guess I forget how he broke it down for me, but the denser THC molecules will settle to the bottom of your bladder because they've been in there for a while. You've been holding it for a while, and it's not like you're not disrupting the flow of your bladder because it's literally just sloshing around in there. And then the top is the lighter molecules. So in the middle, you just learn how to beat a drug test.
Yay!
Yeah, and the same thing happens with other type of drugs too.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Education, guys.
Yeah, seriously.
That's epic.
I don't know if we're supposed to teach you how to beat a drug test.
No, I don't know. There's
Education
no rules.
purposes.
Yeah, it's all education purposes.
Education purposes.
All right, Tony. So then the last question to cover is kind of like a case study, and you can just kind of use me. So I'm 154 right now.
Okay.
Let's say I wanted to fight featherweight,
okay,
which is 145 MMA, or
okay,
let's say that's what the featherweight is at MMA. So give me my plan. Assuming my nutrition's on point, all the other stuff is good.
Yeah. From just a straight nutrition and water manipulation standpoint, we have 2 weeks. So presumably we've done this a couple weeks before to see how we can manipulate your water.
Okay.
So when you think about it, like if I'm training someone for a show or for a competition, at the 6 week mark, I have them go through a test run dehydration.
Cool.
Because I need to know how their body responds to water, how their body responds to carbohydrates, how their body responds to salt. I need enough time to correct for diet. So we can assume that's already happened.
Gotcha.
And then this is based on complete assumptions. So this isn't a real thing based on Isaac's actual body. So don't take it and run with it.
Yeah.
So for you, let's just say your salt absorption is good, your potassium absorption is good, you don't bloat very easy. Mm-hmm. We would start tapering water out. We would also have an idea at this point how much water you can actually tolerate and how much water you're going to lose from just cutting carbs down.
Gotcha.
So ideally, we don't want to cut your carbs too low because we want to keep the glycogen in your muscles full as possible. So we'd start tapering out your water a little bit, keep your potassium up, keep your magnesium up, keep your calcium up, so we can keep the water that we're taking in and put it into the muscle.
Inside.
Drop the sodium down. So this way, any extracellular water is going to fall out of the body, ideally, perfect world scenario. We cut your water to about half of whatever your normal consumption is. So we're going to say a gallon a day. We cut down. The first 3 to 4 days, you're going to feel thirsty. You're going to feel, the first 3 to 4 days, you're not going to feel super thirsty because you're actually going to be pulling water out of your fat cells, And then after that third day, potentially fourth day, you'll start noticing your thirst is going up like crazy. Because the other thing that's happening is you're going to have less insulin being produced by your system, so your kidney function will actually kick up, and you'll start losing the water that you are taking in, which will also drain out excess salt. Now what happens is, depending on where that puts your weight, let's say we've made it. If we made it there in because it's possible to make it there in
that fast, that easy.
You can make it there in 5 days.
Because right now my inflammation is like 0.367. It's not very high.
But you're still going to have that fat, the water that's in the fat cells.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So when you think about it, I think it's what's
there's still stuff to plenty of stuff to lose. Yeah.
So that's like when you look at, like, I use bodybuilders, MMA fighters. They are all relatively lean before the weigh-ins, and also they do the weigh-in, and it's like
even leaner.
What the hell just happened? How did we get here? So what they do is they end up pulling all the water from the fat into the bloodstream, and then they start shedding all that out.
Then they repeat steps 1 through 4.
Exactly. So our goal is to get you there a little bit earlier. So this is where a lot of fighters mess up. Because bodybuilder competitors, it doesn't matter. You can feel like crap on stage, doesn't matter. But when it comes to fighting,
you gotta be your best.
Too much, because you weigh in like a day or two. How many days before do you weigh in? I don't remember.
24 hours.
Okay, yeah. So you're weighing in the day before. That's right, because we got Scotty already. We were talking about that. So when you weigh in, you're gonna refuel, and if you've gone too far, your electrolytes are too depleted, you can't absorb the water. So now what happens is you're dehydrated. Yeah, you're bloated. You're feeling lethargic, and then you've sucked up a ton of water, which is great. But where did that water go? If it went into the muscle, you're not going to cramp. You're not going to have lactic acid build up. That's how you make it 10 rounds. That's how you make it 5 rounds. That's how you make it the distance. What happens to a lot of competitors, a lot of fighters, is they don't hydrate right, they don't carb up right, and they feel either heavy, and then their body is going through too much sugar too fast because they didn't have the right quality carbohydrates in, or they're heavy because they're dehydrated. So think about like an engine with old motor oil in it. It's kind of like, it's still working, but it's grinding a lot.
Yeah.
That's what happens to the viscosity of your blood. It gets thicker, and now you're trying to move, and you're grinding
so you have to work
harder.
harder.
And then you can't buffer it. You can't buffer lactic acid.
Yeah.
So that's where you end up losing a lot. So as the water goes back in, you have those electrolytes in there, so the muscle becomes a sponge, so that you have the carbohydrates in there, you have the electrolytes in there, and this is again perfect world scenario. Each person's gonna be different, and then it sucks into the muscle, and now you can perform. You can perform lighter, which means since your muscles are heavier and denser,
that's where the performance comes in.
Exactly.
The performance aspect.
So that's where the recovery is. So you're not cutting any real weight, because in the perfect world scenario, if you weighed at 154 and you're trying to get to 144, you're back to 154 before the competition starts.
That's exactly what I would want too.
And that's where you're comfortable. That's where your training weight is. That's where you know what's going on. If you're much lighter than that, you may be slightly dehydrated. But then the competition side is, how well did the other person hydrate? How well did the person recover?
Absolutely.
If they did the same things, you've got an even fight. But that's why you watch some fighters get blown out of the water. So you know this fighter's conditioned better. You know this fighter's trained harder. And next thing you know, the fighter can't lift their arms. And this is what they train for. This is what they get paid for.
Absolutely.
So it's not that they're like doing anything wrong. It's just that nutrition, the stress response, lack of sleep,
communication,
all those things,
all that stuff starts suffering.
Yep.
Hence the knockouts.
Yep, and that's it. Because then, of course, it's easier to get a knockout because you're dehydrated. So your brain is already in a state of, like, I don't want to say friedness. That's not really a word, but it's compromised.
Compromised.
Yeah. So then you get hit, and it's like that perfect hit, and it's like, oh, it didn't even look like that was that hard, and the guy's just done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because the brain suffers from dehydration. Everything suffers from dehydration.
Oxygen, less recovery, man. Crazy. That's cool. I want to experiment with that. I would say probably within the next month or so. Play around with that and see how I can bounce it back down and up and stuff. That'd be cool, just to like play with that.
Just to try it. Yeah.
But that makes perfect sense. And I remember reading that essentially it's just those steps and then you repeat them. But that's exactly what happens. The electrolytes are very, very important. Yeah. So that in-between phase of 24 hours, okay, now it's time to put the muscle back on. That goes back to Steph's point of fructose is the better option versus the bad food. So fruit, whole food, organic stuff as opposed to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you trickle it in. So that's the other mistake a lot of people make is they load it in, which leads to gastrointestinal distress. Because if you leave and you're like, yeah,
that makes sense because all that sugar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is, and this is where the willpower comes in and the self-control, because sometimes that trickling effect, it triggers your body to go, okay, I'm hungry and I'm thirsty, just pour it all in. And that's where it goes, because you have to basically slowly bring it back up. No, go.
I have okay, sorry, because I was thinking, I'm going back to thinking about what I've been reading in my, like, books and stuff here lately. Because you guys know I am in school to be a registered dietitian, and I'm taking right now advanced human nutrition. And I'm learning about the, transporter molecules that get, glucose inside the, inside, yes. There's like 14 of them, and oh my gosh, there's so much information.
Yeah.
But when it comes to fructose, I was literally just, as you're going through this, I'm going through my mind, I'm thinking about trying to remember how fructose gets into the enterocyte in the small intestine in the first place. And actually, you're more likely to get a higher amount of fructose into the enterocyte when there is a higher level of glucose as well. So when one of the glucose, if I'm remembering this correctly, one of the glucose transporters, when that one becomes more
elevated.
when that's active, yes, there we go. When that's become activated, the transporter for fructose is more likely to bring in more fructose.
So there has to be a specific glut transporter.
Yes, and I believe the
3,
one
4,
for
which one is it?
The one for fructose, I believe, is 5.
Okay.
And I know it's GLUT2 that is responsible for facilitated transport for glucose.
So cool.
Which it's actually fascinating for GLUT2 because GLUT2 is actually inside the enterocyte. So typically that is going to take the glucose molecule. I'm getting real sciencey real quick. That's going to take that's going to take the glucose molecule and take it into the hepatic portal vein to send it to the liver. But when there is an excessive amount of glucose in the intestines, that GLUT2 actually gets put out into the brush border. So that gets actually put outside of the enterocyte. So that allows for your body's like, all right, let's bring it in. So that allows for pretty much like diffusion, more or less, like into the
now
cell.
It's just a matter of finding the fruits and vegetables, probably fruits that turn those on.
Yeah, that bring those much, more available. And now, when it comes to GLUT5, which I'm pretty sure it's GLUT5 that has to do with fructose, if I remember correctly. Because I know GLUT4 is insulin dependent. Yes. And so with GLUT5, that is also in the brush border. But like I said, there's more of those around the muscles and everything like that. But in order to get it into the body in the first place,
so cool.
like it's turned on when GLUT2 is activated as well. So when GLUT2 is more active, GLUT5 is going to be more active to bring in more fructose.
Feels pretty easy.
So when you think about it, like you have to have both in order to bring it in. But with the fructose, it's more likely to work better for muscle growth just because there's so many more of those transporters in the muscle cell.
Yeah.
You would assume performance would be the same. But But that's probably where the phytonutrients and the carotenoids, the flavonoids come in.
Yeah.
What are those, what the hormesis processes, are they activating the glut? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, what are they activating? What foods aren't activating? And then that's where the perfect meal comes in from when you are cutting.
Yeah.
This is the exact amount of blueberries you have to have because it has polyphenols, right? Or blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's freaking cool, dude.
Yeah. And
We need to reach out to some UFC fighters. They need to work with us.
Yeah. And when you think about what it translates to is so you said it best, like use me as a case study. That 12 weeks, the first 4 weeks is a case study of how you process certain foods, how you absorb certain foods, how your training is with certain foods. The second 4 weeks is how are you manipulating carbs, how are you manipulating energy levels, how are you manipulating all that. The last 4 weeks, there's not much we can do as far as endurance or performance.
At that point,
so we're manipulating water and sodium and things like that. How does your body respond to those things? So you think about it like that week 6, that test run, that's kind of our blank slate. We know how all this stuff works. Now, how does this stuff work?
Gotcha.
And then once we have it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work the same the next round, but that gives us our base. So that first competition, first show, first whatever, that sets a baseline for us, and it gives us variables to manipulate based on your body, and we just track it all out.
Yeah.
And that's why, and Bowen called me out for saying it all the time, like I hate competitors who are, and I don't use hate a lot, I can't stand it. It physically makes me angry, like to the point of like wanting to choke somebody. Competitors who compete and they turn around and they're like, oh yeah, now I'm a coach.
Yeah.
I'm a competitive coach.
That happens a lot.
You have trained yourself, and unfortunately, maybe you trained yourself well, maybe you didn't train yourself well, maybe you had a good coach, and this happens a lot because I had this happen to me, where your coach gets you all the information you need. They don't necessarily need to give you the background. So the thing I like about training competitors is I'm going to give you X, you're going to go do it. So what Stephanie just went into, you don't go into with the average client or the average competitor. But the reason why all those things worked for that competitor is because I watched how everything worked up till that point. And it's like, that's the part that they don't get.
It's not a one-size-fits-all.
And that's it. And they take that and they bro science it at that point. So what they saw was, okay, manipulate this, manipulate that, we're going to change this, we're going to change that.
And then they just say...
Right down to the nuts that you're eating, right down to the fruits that you're eating, right down to all those things. There's a reason why those are going in there. And, I mean, you saw when I made this spreadsheet of nuts and things. So I already had that, but I just decided to put it into a better place to use it.
Yeah.
And I do that. And, like, I have clients that I've told, okay, you got to eat Brazil nuts, and you got to eat this, and you got to eat that. And they're like, yeah, I don't know. And I'll see it on somebody else's meal plan. They'll come back and be like, yeah, I'm working with somebody, and this is what I've got. I'm like, I have seen that exact same list. This isn't going to work for you. And I've thrown it out.
Yeah.
And they're like, how do you know it's not going to work for me? I'm like, because your body type is not like the person who gave that to you. And I've pulled it up before and shown them, I'm like, you wonder where you got your meal plan from? You got it from me.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I didn't. I got it from... You walked in with this, right? Like, this is
and
what you showed
I gave
me.
this to them.
Yeah. And they're like, I'm like, it's okay, because a lot of people do it. And it, like I said, completely makes me nuts.
Crazy.
But it's, when you look at how to do it, like I tell people I want 16 weeks. Ideally, you can do it in 12. And realistically, like I did it with Katie in 8. You know, depending on how the person's body responds, you can actually look at all those variables. And in 16 weeks, I can tell you more about how you break down foods than most people will be able to tell you in your entire life, because I was studying it, I was watching it, I was getting feedback. How did you feel? How did this work for you? How are you feeling after this? Like, I just had a lady send me a message. She's like, this is what I'm eating. I feel absolutely amazing. Should I change anything? You feel absolutely amazing. No, you shouldn't.
No.
Like, that's all the
Great.
information I need. Yeah.
Fantastic.
She's training for a powerlifting competition. She's like, well, should I do more? No.
Yeah.
Like, if it's that's this, I gave you a list of instructions. They're working amazingly for you. When it stops working, I know what to change.
Yeah.
Don't start changing stuff on your own.
Until it's ready. Yeah.
So when I'm ready to start powerlifting and like get into that competitively, I'm gonna have you really. I'm curious to see how that goes, because I'll definitely get with you and pick your brain about what I need to get done. Of course, mind you, it might be until I'm done with school, because I don't even have time to work out right now. But
Well, I should be here then. I'd like to assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nah, you'll be
Sweet.
here.
Yeah, famous last words. I was planning on being here, but
I guess the biggest takeaway is science matters. There's a reason why facts are facts, and
Yeah.
you know, bro science is just kind of, it's probably a lot of ideas all just jam packed together and not really researched.
Well, I mean, talking about the science matters is that there are actually genetic disorders with some of the GLUT transporters, and that there is, and I think, you know, I don't remember which one it is, but we solid, we good. But yeah, there's one of the GLUT transporters that if it's genetically, if it doesn't know how to work properly in terms of turn on when it needs to, you'll literally get LDL deposits and things like that.
The bad ones.
Yeah, exactly.
The VLDLs.
And so all of that stuff will deposit, and you know. So the thing is that there is no one size fits all. There's never going to be a one size fits all for every single person, and that's the one downside for the bro science, is that this is the overarching umbrella, and this is what you have to do. Well, that might not work for me. That might not work for you, just because you may have a genetic disorder that prevents one of those things from working for you. Yep. Same for me. Same for you. That's the one thing, is that people need to understand in terms of when it comes to just going and working with someone who just gives you a meal plan and that's it, and you're not seeing results, but they can't do anything with that, there's a problem there.
Yeah.
And so,
and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about like your clients. And if you go to your coach or your nutritionist and they're like, well, you're not sticking to it, and you know you're sticking to it, that's not a you thing anymore. That's a them thing and a program design thing. Because I've actually had that a bunch of times. I had one lady come in and she was like, my coach just says I'm not sticking to everything. Well, are you sticking to everything? It's a very simple question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Be honest.
Okay. So then what did they change? Nothing. So if the program's not working, they didn't change anything. Like what I said, if the program's working, you don't change anything.
Yeah.
If it's not working, you give it a week, 2 weeks. 2 weeks, you still see zero change. You're not feeling any better. You have to change it. You're dealing with a limited time frame, and that's why I like the 16, because it gives you that error window versus just do more cardio.
yeah, that's fair.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks
I
for
liked
watching.
today. I thought
Yeah,
I
today
got a
was
lot
awesome.
of really
Episode
good information.
6.
Yeah. Hit the share button. Remember, share it. Don't
Share
just
it.
Yes, share, like, subscribe.
Follow I'm doing 60 days, challenging myself, 6 to 8 pounds of muscle. I think Tony's doing it as well.
I'm going to drop my body fat down to ridiculous levels. I'm not going to tell you guys yet. I'm going to show you guys.
Ooh, yay. Stephanie can't make any, like, commitments because I have lots and lots of homework and I have very little time.
Schoolwork.
But,
That's a good reason. I'll take
yeah.
that.
But really and truly, I am going to try and really get back into exercising more than, like, once a week is what I'm doing right now. So that is my goal. My goal right now is to try to come in, like, 3 times a week.
For sure.
At least to get in and do a little bit more than what I'm doing.
Perfect.
Have a good Friday, guys.
Happy Friday.
Y'all too. Take care.
Thanks for checking us out. If you like this, go ahead, like it, share it, subscribe. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram.